Welcome to Writer's Room, and today's podcast episode is about self-publishing in the digital realm. Joining us today in our fortress is Dr. Early Lawson. Hi Early, thank you for joining us. So just to set the backdrop, could you tell us a bit about pre-digital self-publishing and how digital media has impacted it?
Pre-digital, self-publishing had a bad name, and it was often known as vanity publishing. But digital publishing and e-readers and online book selling and social media changed the landscape completely. And suddenly an author could do many things a publisher could do at little cost, other than their labour. And when authors started to sell books in significant numbers, ebooks that is, then everything really changed. So when I say significant numbers, what I mean is something like Hugh Howey's Wool, which was the first book in the Silo series, and it was published in 2011. That sold over 200,000 ebooks before a traditional publisher, Simon & Schuster, stepped in to acquire the print rights. And, that's huge numbers. And then, of course, more recently, we've got Colleen Hoover. She was self-publishing for 10 years before she took over the chart. And her recent success is really all down to social media. So again, it's the digital publishing realm that has been a game changer here. And in terms of self-publishing, it's also increased the opportunity for diverse voices to be heard.
That's definitely a huge change, but it's also to be noted that not all self-published books witness success. What do you think are the most crucial steps when self-publishing a book online?
The big one is, so do your research. Know first of all, if you're self-publishing a book, then make sure the book you're publishing is in a genre that sells as an ebook. So, if you're writing a romance novel, crime fiction, spec fiction, fantastic. If you're writing a very technical manual with lots of charts, think again. So do your research into your category, first of all, and then plan your approach and develop a strategy. So think of it like this. As a self-publisher, you're still a publisher. And so you're just going to have to do all the things a publisher does. And so you'll need to do things like editing, design, production, promotion, sales, permissions if you're using any third-party material, rights, then of course finance. You're going to be looking after the money side. So all of those things in a publishing house, traditionally, you'd have different departments doing them. But as a self-publisher, you're going to have to do all of that. So you'll have to plan for that.
That sounds like a lot of work for a person to do on their own. So how can we navigate this process of self-publishing to ensure a professional outcome?
There are things you can do to make it much more professional, and there are things that if you don't do them, it'll look very homemade, which is absolutely fine if that's the look you're going for. But most authors aren't. Most authors don't want their self-published book to look any different from a book produced by a trade publisher. They want the reader to have the same experience. If you think of it like that, be kind to the reader, and being professional is part of that. So when you're working on a manuscript, get feedback. Only use the kind of feedback that works for you. And that might be through a reputable manuscript assessment agency. You might be part of a writer's group. That stage of it, really important. So that's the developmental process. And then when you're ready and you think the manuscript's in good shape, if you can afford it, hire an editor. Always worthwhile. They're invaluable, but you might not be able to afford that. So at the very least, pay to have it professionally proofread, because it's incredibly difficult to proofread your own work.
In addition to these steps, in traditional publishing, designing a suitable cover also appears to play a crucial role. How big of a part does cover design play in a digitally published book?
Exactly the same role it plays in a book by a traditional publisher. Essential. That's back to reader experience. And also, this is one of the areas where self-published books let themselves down because they don't look professional. And again, you want it to look as good as possible. If you're thinking about the cover, study books in the genre. See what is the norm, what is the standard. Don't reinvent the wheel unless you want to be. If it's an experimental book and it's literary fiction and you want to do something radical, go do it. But if you're publishing epic fantasy, then use a cover design that your readers would expect and that fans would expect and feel comfortable with, because it signals what kind of book it is. Nielsen Bookscan have done research that shows that books that don't have a cover on bookseller sites online sell far fewer copies. So there's two parts of that. It's not only having an appropriate cover, it's having a cover at all.
Thanks, Early. I think that's a good note to end today. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned for more tips on publishing in the digital realm.